All right, good morning, everybody. Chad, congrats to you from a Wittenberg alum. You know, you and I think you were a senior when I was a freshman. I believe that's when I was. Congrats. I know Jim Lowe, a Wittenberg alum, and actually Chad and I were just chatting that we stay in touch with our golf coach, and actually Wittenberg just is ranked #1 now in the nation, so we were chatting about that. Mitch, congrats on your election into the NOPGA Hall of Fame on your first attempt. This is quite an honor and is well deserved. I thank you for allowing me to present you. Julie, holy cow, congrats to you also. You've been a wonderful wife and best friend to Mitch for many years, and in fact, all the way back in the high school days at Orville is where they met. Mitch, I know all of us in this room admire your hard work and dedication you have given to the game of golf, your family, and to the members of Club Walton. Doug, I know Doug is here as member Walton, and congrats to you on your induction to the Hall of Fame a couple days ago. I also hope that you keep, Mitch, your strong dedication to working on your driver swing, because to be honest, I'm getting a little tired of hitting second shots out of the trees in our alternate shots. But obviously we seem to do okay in those events, and you make up for it on the putting green and take up my lack there. You obviously have been a long-time great player in our section. You're probably, if those of you here have played with Mitch, he's got to have, besides Roby, probably one of the best short games by far in our section. I played with him thousands of times, and I know it just happened at the match play the other day against Triv, but he can get up and down from some unbelievable spots. And just a quick little story on that sort of brings back some memories. A couple years ago, Mitch and I played in the senior PGA Championship down at Valhalla, and something Mitch didn't say in his bio, he was also a member of the 1979 NCAA championship team when he was at Ohio State. And on that team, and not just on that team, but the players that Mitch played with, Joey Sindelar, I think Rod Spittle, who I actually got paired with Rod Spittle in one of the rounds, John Cook, etc. And I actually grew up with John Cook when he lived in Akron. We actually lived right next door to each other from probably kindergarten through 4th grade, and then he moved out west. But it was fun when we were there, and we had a rain stoppage, and we're in the locker room, Mitch and I, and there we walk in and we see John Cook. I hadn't seen John Cook in 40 years. And Mitch, I know I'd seen him, they played golf together. It was just sort of neat that they welcomed us, sit down, we sat down and BS'd in the locker room. And I want to say, I think Jay Haas was sitting there, Kenny Perry, John Cook, and it was just sort of neat the way they welcomed the club pros in with these events. But it was just sort of fun, me being with Mitch, a longtime friend, and then we sort of got chatting with John Cook for a long time, which was sort of neat. Your owner, Rob Rosenkrantz, has been very lucky to have had you as a golf pro the past 25 years, and I know you feel very much the same about him. You guys have been a great team, together. It's very unusual that you stay at a club that long, but to have that great of respect for each other between employee and owner, I think is great. At this time, I said I'd try to keep it shorter than my golf swing is, as far as my balk move that I do. But at this time, fellow PGA golf pros and guests, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my best friend and partner, my best friend and partner to the Hall of Fame, Mitch.
something you aspire to do, but something that happens from hard work, and I'm sincerely grateful for that, to be included in this group. Chad, congratulations to you as well. I'm sure that we're going to have some great stories down the road, but it's really great this road we've traveled to get here, and I congratulate you as well. To the juniors and our other award recipients, golf is a game that'll teach you a lot about life. It'll shape you into the person you are. I was fortunate to induct one of my guests, Doug Hallenstein here. I was fortunate to present him to the Hall of Fame for NOPGA last Thursday, and one of the things that he said that resonated well with me was that golf is a game that will shape you into what you are. If you have the opportunity to meet with people, the best people I think of any sport that you can play, and they all have something to teach you, and the game will teach you about life, and it's no better place to be. Whether you're a golf professional or you're just an amateur, golf is a game that you'll learn a lot for life. So I hope all these juniors just continue to play, continue to learn about life, because it will teach you a lot. To my wife, Julie, she's my rock, my best friend, 36 years. And I think everybody knows that when you play golf, it takes a lot of time away, and I appreciate her understanding what golf means to me and what I have to do to be a better player, as well as my job. But I think most wives understand the job. It's the other things that we do that they maybe don't understand as well. But fortunately, she does. And she's been all of my support, my best supporter for many years. To my mom and dad, the opportunity to play this game. Unfortunately, my dad passed away quite some time ago. But I can tell you, I feel his presence on the golf course quite a few times. Sorry he's not here today, but I know he's watching. To my sister Sherry, it's nice to have her here. Circumstances were such that she just happened to be traveling through Akron yesterday, so she was able to be here. We don't see each other very often, so that worked out. Obviously, there was a meaning to this, so that was great. Thanks, Tom, for I knew you would be the one. There are a lot of other people here that I thought about, but Tom and I have been through quite a few wars on the golf course. I put him in a lot of bad positions over time. I was going to talk about that later, but I have a comment that he made at Valhalla to my caddy that I'll share with you later. It all started for me. I had a grandfather. I was very fortunate. I had a grandfather who was a scratch golfer, and he was a typical of a person born in 1900. He was a pretty tough old guy with a big heart, and taught me to play golf. I don't ever remember any formal lessons that he gave me. I do remember just playing golf and kind of watching him. I don't really remember him ever giving me any formal lessons. So I kind of grew up learning to play golf just by watching and learning. And it wasn't long before I learned if I was going to get any better, I had to associate with some better players and watch and learn better players. There happened to be another young man in town of Orville who was a pretty good player, about my age. His name was Ned Weaver. So it wasn't long before Ned and I ended up being playing partners along with my grandfather, 36 holes a day, and the old Harley golf court with the rudder on the front. Everybody remembers those days. They had those golf carts. You younger people won't remember the rudder carts. Those were easy to flip, those little three-wheel rudders. And we did that a few times. But Ned and I played all through high school. And it wasn't long before he was off to college. And I played one more year of high school. He was 3 months older than me. And he ended up going to Kent. And I happened to have a high school golf coach who wasn't a very good player, but he was a good reader of personalities, and he was a very close friend of mine. Matter of fact, he presented me on 2 occasions in the Hall of Fames. I haven't kept in touch with Rich for a long time, Rich King, unfortunately, but I know he's doing well. He taught me a lot about myself. When it came time for me to go to school, I know Frank Truitt at Kent and Ed Weaver wanted me to come to Kent, but he told me that I learned by being around other players. He knew my learning curve. He knew that I learned by watching others. And he told me I needed to go where there were better players, better than me, that I could learn from. So even though it was probably noted by a lot of people to be a bad decision, I decided to go to Ohio State. It just so happened they had the #1 and #2 recruit in the country my freshman year. But off I went. A lot of good players there. I went there for the golf course and the players. And played for 4 years, lettered for 4 years. And while I was there, obviously I got married after my freshman year. That's kind of unusual for a college player. But we moved to Columbus, up and moved her away from hometown. We went to Columbus. And I found a person there that, for the first time, I decided I wanted to have somebody help me learn how to play golf. I'd always learned from watching, but I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. I just needed to have somebody help me get there. So one summer I asked our girls golf coach, J.R. Abels. I don't know how many in the room here know J.R., but J.R. did a lot of teaching, and I had a lot of respect for his teaching ability. So I asked J.R., one day I went up to him and said, J.R., here's what I think I need to do. Can you help me do that? And he helped me a lot. He was probably the first PGA professional that really formally gave me what I would call lessons. Helped me a lot. Had a decent career in college, but then it was time to find some better players after college to go play with. And in those days, there weren't a lot of mini tours. There was no second tour. So I up and pulled my wife away from home again, and we moved to Orlando. Played 3.5 years on the Space Coast there. While I was there, it was probably the first time in my life that I reached a stalemate after about 3.5 years, where I couldn't continue to climb that ladder and find the next place to go. So it was time to try to find something else to do. And I came up here at Christmas time, I believe, and looked around for jobs as an assistant. I figured I'd go back to being an assistant, which is what I did when I was in high school. I kind of worked around golf shops, and I'd been behind the counter enough to know what to do. And I knew that's what I wanted to be. I know I wanted to stay around golf. So came back here to Ohio, and at Christmas time, searched around, couldn't find a job. Jim Logue had just hired Kim Bulkey at Ken Brookside, so I missed out on that opportunity. Went back to Florida, and pretty soon I get a call from Ned Weaver. Hadn't talked to Ned for a long time. We hadn't stayed in touch real well, but we knew what everybody knew what we were doing. And Ned was working for Herb Page. He was Herb Page's head professional at Windmill Links. And he calls me and he says, if you're still looking for a job, I think I know where there is one. And I said, oh yeah? I said, I'm interested. And he said, well, one of my college teammates, Mike Morrow, is leaving the job at Fairlawn to become the girls golf coach at Kent. And I think Frank would be interested in hiring him. I had never been to Fairlawn. I had somewhat heard of Frank Warden. But I said, sure, I'm interested. So Mike Morrow calls me the next day, and Mike talks to me for a while. And I'd never met Mike Morrow. He talked for a while, and he said, I'll have Frank give you a call. Well, it wasn't a day or so later, Frank calls me. And about an hour later on the phone, I had a job. Never met the man, never been to his facility, but he gave me a job. And I know Frank's not here today, but I saw him a couple weeks ago, still sitting at the same table he had lunch every day when I worked for him for 7 years. With the same 3 guys at the same time, and his tea time was the same time as it was every day of life.
Wow.
But that's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just great that you can do that in this game. But I'm always indebted to Frank. He taught me a lot. Taught me how to be a teacher. Taught me a lot about the game. Frank was obviously a great player. On a side note, I'm not sure he taught me a lot about business of golf, but he taught me a lot about the PR of golf and how to treat your members, how to teach. From there, I was very fortunate. My last year at Fairlawn, I finally won the assistant championship. And the story of the assistant championship, it was at Squaw Creek. And those days we had a pro-am, and I think we still do. And I happened to be paired with the club president. Last name was Waldman, I believe. Never been to Squaw Creek before. And on the front 9, I made back-to-back 10s and shot 53 in the pro-am. And I managed to play pretty good on the back 9 and shot 89. Made 9 straight pars to finish. And we had a sponsor that day. Back in those days, obviously anybody who knew Frank knew that Frank was a big Hogan guy. So you had to play Hogan golf equipment or you couldn't be in Frank's staff at all. I was playing, I think the Hogan ball, or maybe the Max Slide ball, because the Hogan ball back in those days wasn't all that good. But I was playing Hogan clubs. Our sponsor just happened to be Typist, and Mike Griffith. Now, I really didn't know Mike at the time because I knew him because obviously he came and sold golf balls to us. But I really didn't know Mike very well. And I was fortunate the next day to shoot 142 and win after shooting 89 in the practice round. And I've always said in this game, you've got to be an optimist, and that's one thing my members will tell you, I'm the ultimate optimist when it comes to weather or anything else. Because this game throws you a lot of curveballs, so it's good to be an optimist. We got paired at Hinkley Hills. I'll never forget this as long as I live. We get paired together at Hinkley Hills, and I got a 2-shot lead on Gary going into the second day. And I've never played it. Well, after 2 holes, I was 1 down, and I made 2 pars. So that was kind of my beginning with Gary. But Gary worked for me for 2 years. We played a lot together as partners. Had some great times. And I think that's when Tom and I started playing. When Gary left me to go to Aurora Country Club, I think that's when you and I started playing as partners. So that would have been 1991. Been a long time. I've got a lot of people that along the way that I learned from. Obviously, I said I learned by watching. I'd just like to go over a few things here in closing. Quite a few people along the way. I won the Ohio Open as an assistant at Fairlawn. I was still an assistant. And I got paired with Jim Lowe that year. And Jim, I think, and I played probably, of the next 10 or 12 Ohio Opens, we must have got paired together almost every year in the first 2 rounds. Got to the point where we kind of felt like that was the only time we played together. But I learned a lot from Jim over the years. I looked up to Jim. Quite a few other players over the years that I felt like I learned a lot from. Obviously, Trevisano, obviously Atch. In the last 6, 8 years, even Gary Roberson and I have spent a lot of time together. He's become a great friend. He's helped me a lot. I've always looked up to Gary for quite a while for his playing ability. He's a great fan, great competitor. Rick Jones has helped me a lot. Another person who I've asked to help me with my golf swing. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I went to Rick. And Rick helps a lot of people here in the area. A lot of you, I'm sure, have worked with Rick. Rick's a little tough to deal with. For those of you that work with Rick, he's stubborn. I went to Rick and I said, okay, I'd like you to work with me, but here's the rules. I'm going to tell you what I want to do, and you're going to help me do it. So I didn't give him carte blanche. And he and I don't seem to argue like he does with Dennis. We get a kick out of him and Dennis. It's like Butt and Jeff. They're out there just having it's comical. But I'm sure there's a lot of people I've overlooked. I met Jay Spitali at Reed Park Memorial. Real quick story, in the state JC tournament. He was in the division older than I was, and it was at Reed Park Memorial where El Collins was. And my JC sponsor had a family emergency or something and had to leave, and I had to ride home with this guy from Reed Park Memorial. Never had met him before. And this was back in the 70s, and if you remember for those of you that are really young, you don't really know what a hippie is. Well, Jay was the original hippie. Another quick thing, how many are old enough to remember that you had a few players that could hit the old persimmon balls in woods, and when they hit it, it looked more like a jet taking off, where it went low and then kind of took off? That's the way Jay hit. And back in those days, everybody would ooh and ah when they saw a person who could hit a ball that way. Nowadays, the spin's no good. You remember that, Jay? But Jay and I've had a great long friendship for a long time since that day. Served on the board here for a long time, and there's a lot of people that I learned a lot of things that weren't necessarily golf from. Joe Haas, Don Kotnick, Paul Turpak, Joe Flog, Charlie Wood, Joe Najat. Joe was one of the great ones, and Don. Tough guy to follow, a great friend. Looked up to him for a long time as well. One thing in closing, I just want to thank the Hall of Fame for this great honor. I hope that means I'm not washed up yet. I certainly hope to continue to strive, to continue to play better all the time. I have no plans on anything else. Tom started to talk about Valhalla in closing. We're walking off the fourth hole of the first practice round, and I've got a caddy from Valhalla named Mike. I forget Mike's last name. I think it was Preston or something like that. And as we're walking off the tee, Tom says to my caddy, he says, "Don't be surprised, and don't be worried when Mitch hits it in the woods." Now, what a great thing for a guy to say to my caddy. I've only played 4 holes with him. Don't worry when he hits it in the woods. That's where he does his best work. So, Tom, I appreciate it. Hall of Fame committee, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.